Hello, welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Very excited to be with Ivan and Jeffrey, founders of Crowdcreate, here on today's show.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We've been in the same circles for years. I've been a fan of the campaigns that Crowdcreate works on across reward crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, digital asset, cryptocurrency and blockchain campaigns over the years. I imagine there's a lot of e-commerce and marketing milestones that you guys hit for clients post crowdfunding as well too. So very interested to learn more about your story and can tell the audience right now the caliber of your expertise.
Okay. Ivan, do you want to kick it out?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jason, for having us. It's been a pretty exciting few years and getting to know you and your team. Yeah, we've been in the space. Interestingly, we started about 5-6 years ago when it was rewards crowdfunding. So we kind of saw the entire industry morph and evolve from, it was first, Kickstarter, Indiegogo days, and then we saw it grow over to equity crowdfunding. And we kind of follow along those trends. And, most recently it's jumping into, IDOs and, the digital assets and those exchanges. But, I'm pretty excited we can share the whole story of how we got and how we started, how we got here, and kind of the lessons we learned I think is part of what we can share.
Yeah. So at a high level, what is Crowdcreate? So Crowdcreate is a marketing agency, as Ivan mentioned. Started 5 to 6 years ago. We've worked on over 120 plus projects now, and we've raised collectively over $130 million. We've worked on everything from perk-based crowdfunding. Our very first campaign was the world's smallest Bluetooth headset, to today we're doing a lot of digital assets, token sales, real estate funds, launch of a lot of startups, on platforms like Start Engine and whatnot. So we're industry agnostic, but mostly focus on the future of finance, fintech, startups, real estate, and these hot growth markets that we're seeing.
Very exciting. And how did you guys first get introduced to reward-based crowdfunding? It sounds like that's the beginning of the journey. How did Kickstarter and Indiegogo end up on your radar?
It's pretty interesting. So I can start the story there. So I think it's like probably a little bit more than that. So probably 6-7 years ago. It was before the first Apple AirPods came out. So the whole concept of wireless earbuds didn't really exist. And because it didn't exist, there really wasn't a market for it. You go on Amazon, there's no such thing. People weren't even searching for it yet. And so we went to Hong Kong and we actually found and partnered with this manufacturer. And they literally had the first one. It was like sitting on a shelf. I got to know him. It wasn't on the shelf. It was on the shelf below that shelf. They always have their second gen products hidden away. But we saw it and we're like, hey, the market, you can kind of see when there's a product that's exciting. You're like, hey, I can personally use it. And it kind of got the wheels of creativity turning. And how, like, let's say if you go to a traditional route where you build a business plan, you go to investor, you try to raise money for it. And if it's such a new concept, sometimes they have no idea how to look at it because it doesn't exist. So that's when we got really turned on to the idea of tapping into the crowd. And it was actually from that instance is like, we kind of realized that the power of the crowd, the power of, communities behind a project. And I remember when we were first starting to do kind of the pre-launch is what they call it now, but we were using like influencers, athletes, people that would like. It's funny because like all those people are now on the Apple AirPods commercials, but all these people that would love a wireless earbud, they just latched on and they loved it. And so fast forward, I think we spent about 7 months prepping and creating content, and we launched it on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And I think we raised $700,000 in that life of that campaign. And we're like, whoa, like this is really something. Like crowdfunding and the rewards crowdfunding really, really worked.
Power in the crowd and massive raise. Looking at averages on these platforms, I try to set realistic expectations, far more $25,000 to $50,000 raises on a reward-based crowdfunding campaign. You start hitting 100, low six figures. Wow, that's a standout. But to be at 700, massive. How many backers roughly was that? Or do you know like the average backing level? Are we talking about a couple thousand people that you got to convert on that campaign?
Yeah, it was a couple thousand people. And I think the product was around the $99. It was kind of the brand new world. So no one really established any price points yet. But
Yeah.
you're right. It's like this power of this community and enthusiasts behind a project. And keep in mind that when you're doing these, well, this is for the rewards crowdfunding world, but these are pre-orders. You know, they're supporting your project with their wallets, but they're not going to get it until, you know, the product is actually released.
Yeah, much further down the line. And, I'm just so amazed by those numbers when I look at reward-based crowdfunding as a utility, in the sense of what are the other options? You launch an e-commerce site to get that amount of sales, or, orders in general in the first month would be unheard of. Now you take it to this platform where the momentum is showcased and you're attracting audiences from that site's audience, from Indiegogo, from Kickstarter's audience, depending on the platform. You're driving digital marketing sources to it, all to ramp it up, all to build off that traction that those initial sales are showing. And like you mentioned, for pre-orders, I mean, what other forum would you be able to do that in? And that's what I've always talked to about founders who are looking down the reward crowdfunding road.
Yeah, Jason, and it's a good point that you noted there, because when we initially launched the company, the old way of doing it is you take hundreds of thousands of dollars, you take the risk of buying the inventory first, and then you buy it and then you sell, and you're not sure if it's going to be a success. And this revolution of crowdfunding, and the reason why we call it Crowdcreate, is that it could be applied to any industry. So for any entrepreneurs out there, marketers, and even industry professionals, it's this shift. And you see it now with digital assets and cryptocurrency, is that rather than going the traditional VC route, you could self-fund. You can self-fund from your users, your earliest adopters. And it's actually much easier, subjectively, than raising from venture capital, where you pitch 100 VCs and maybe you'll get one, or maybe even less than that. Now you can actually go to your user base of potentially, millions that are out there on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and go straight to them and raise in smaller chunks and just get their buy-in because of a $100 earbud, or, in the situation with real estate or even startups. It's very powerful.
Oh yeah, and becoming more and more common. I heard about equity crowdfunding and the Reg CF that was coming down the line, Title III, allowing for accredited and unaccredited investors in 2016. We started working on accredited investor Reg D campaigns, basically high net worth audiences, for anyone who hears these terms and trying to figure it out. You're limited to high net worth individuals, over 200K individual income over the past 3 years, $1 million net worth outside of the primary home. 2016 changed all that. How did you guys see that shift the conversation, either with groups that you had already completed a reward-based crowdfund for, or ones that were looking down the equity crowdfunding avenue? And like you mentioned, not having to go after one angel investor, one VC, but instead have a large pool of smaller investors, which are now all on one line item of the cap table in those cases. So not giving voting rights to everyone, but at the same time, allowing your audience, your crowd to participate and take a position.
I think it's a really good opportunity for entrepreneurs. And we've seen a lot of our clients and other projects where they will go from a successful rewards-based crowdfunding, use that traction and social traction, and then almost transition that to an equity crowdfunding, because now you can not only raise more capital, but also puts you in a place where these larger investors, these accredited investors, sophisticated investors, can actually get into your deal. So, that update to the Reg CF was, it was huge. It was huge for the equity crowdfunding industry.
Absolutely. And market the same way for an equity crowdfund versus a reward crowdfunding campaign? Is it the same channels? Are you making differentiations in the audiences or the messaging that you're using, the overall funnels?
So it does vary. And right, when you think of an accredited investor or a qualified purchaser, accredited investor $1 million and above, qualified purchaser $5 million and above, and then also when you talk to VCs, what's common is the psychology of social proof across all of these. And so when you are dealing with perk-based crowdfunding, you can run Facebook ads, and the conversion could be much faster. When you are talking to accredited investors, qualified purchasers, and VCs, it is a longer sales cycle, multiple phone calls, multiple educational webinars. So in terms of the channels you mentioned, if there's one thing that's really tried and true, it's email to get them to convert, and then also paid ads, and we're across the board, just multi-channel and attribution to hopefully the potential prospect would say, wow, I see you everywhere. I see you on these podcasts, see you on my ads, getting your emails.
And Jeffrey, I love how you emphasize that regardless of the audience you're targeting, how much social proof resonates, how much that third-party validation does in a marketing funnel. People generally don't believe what they see on the internet. So, being able to showcase publisher logos, influencers, organizations, groups, even individual testimonials goes a long way. Are there other types of social proof that you guys use, or some success stories, anything that's worked particularly well in terms of creating that validation?
Yeah, so I think it's important to see, especially now, a lot of social traction signals they come in the form of, reviews. So if you're selling a product, people want to look at your Amazon reviews. Another one that's growing right now is just how many mentions you have on these content platforms. So for example, YouTube, or most recently TikTok and Twitter. So there's a lot of these sophisticated investors that are actually watching signals based on how many times you're mentioned. This is a growing trend right now. But let's say, for example, in the world of cryptocurrencies, like these tokens that are rising to the top are the ones that are most mentioned on those platforms. They are the most searched on Google. So it's almost like these investors are almost analyzing and reverse engineering how people are finding about projects, and they're using those as signals.
Absolutely. I notice it for publishing myself. I'll put out an article, and with Forbes as an example, it'll show how many views. I'll get some articles with far more views and try to attribute why. And it's all the social shares. If there's 100 or more social shares on Twitter, there's going to be far more visibility, regardless of how many channels we put out the content on and promote across to our own audiences. It's all about those third parties who are promoting it. It's great to see that investors are focusing on YouTube, TikTok, these different types of social identifiers. And speaking of cryptocurrency further, how the due diligence process has evolved there. I know we were both working on campaigns late 2017, 2018 around some of the cryptocurrency crowd sales and how those have evolved over the years. We work with some cryptocurrency exchanges, mobile app installs, install to funded account ratios is probably the biggest area of focus for us. We're still working on user acquisition with different groups in crypto, and various DeFi projects, and measuring wallet installs, things along those lines. What has been your story with cryptocurrency? How did you guys first get involved? What you could share and not share. I know a lot of deals are private, of course, but just your overall interest towards the vertical, and particularly during this last wave from about November 2020 to where we are here in May 2021. And all of the mainstream attraction. evolution that many of the specific communities within the cryptocurrency umbrella have increased, have grown.
It's a lot to unpack there, and the cryptocurrency industry. So we dove in. So Jeff and I actually heard about it long before. I think it was like 2015. Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember we were at a networking event, and I thought I was a smart guy, going to these networking events, doing business with founders and investors. And this guy comes out of the bathroom. He's like, "What the hell are you guys doing here? You should be buying Bitcoin." I think to this day, Jeff and I still have that photo. But hey, I think he probably has a few Lamborghinis right now. But
oh yeah, 2015 values, absolutely.
But it's interesting because we've seen it evolve from, you had the ICO days where it was a founder, a white paper, and a few memes, and you're off to the races. And we saw that grow where more and more people got in. People started asking for more information. The SEC would get involved. It was kind of the industry had to grow up so quickly. And I'll just fast forward to, let's say, Consensus at 2018 at the last peak. You had oyster dinners. We actually did Bizant. It was one of the fanciest token raises in Asia. And it like culminated in a taco truck right outside of Consensus. And like everyone's hungry, they're going to get a taco. So it's interesting to see the kind of marketing that went in back then. And it was a lot of like attention. How many eyeballs could you get on it? And fast forward to today, now we're looking at an entire new ecosystem where DeFi platforms like Pancake Swaps are actually dropping new tokens, and people are swapping in without even an exchange simply because they're trending on Reddit. It's changed, and I kind of want to dive into this deeper. The kind of this like it's like turning into two types of investors. There's these accredited investors, which is your traditional money, sophisticated investors, but there's also these everyday investors that are starting to pile in. And I can name one token that everybody probably knows by now. Dogecoin is the perfect example. There's no fundamentals, but you get Elon tweeting about it. You get you get enough people talking about it. It's so funny because people are buying. So there are a lot of these. There's a lot of names for them, but the funny one is Poo Coins. But there's a lot of these tokens out there, but they follow this trajectory. It's like they buy billboards everywhere, then they sell swag, then they get influencers on board. It's just a whole new world of how money is funneling into these projects.
Absolutely. And it's very interesting how you pointed out the same path that they take. I was speaking with an influencer yesterday in the space, who I won't name, but basically stated you could tell where coins are going by how they're promoting and if they're following the same playbook that groups did, a few months before, and where they went, and which groups, which publishers, which influencers are talking about them, which rooms are speaking to them. So there's so much going on. I think I was reading how much $1,000 on January 1st would be in Doge today, and it's mind-blowing to watch all of this occurring, and glad to see real numbers attached to it. I mean, I saw Doge was bigger than GMC, different automakers, different banks. Like they're major market cap right now, which is so different than a lot of the conversations we were having in the industry around 2019. I'm also seeing far more in terms of real projects, real tech, real ecosystems, other groups that are building on top of that, authentic, game-changing types of projects that are rolling out. So I think that's been a big learning from the 2017, 2018 activity, and been watching plans actually come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we've seen a lot of waves of movements from going back to 2015, 2016. There was the tech, the Bluetooth wave, charging devices, coolest cooler. Every project started a movement. And when we see conviction in going back to crypto, and Ivan and I kind of, we brushed off this guy that was talking about Bitcoin, but the underlying community for cryptocurrency is so strong, and we see that on these projects. And that's what we also see as another indicator of success. And you think about Dogecoin, you think about the community that they've built. So for any project that really has had success, is the value of their community to just share excitement, energy, social shares, taking them into that sales funnel, turning it into a conversion, and whether it's an accredited investor, taking them to the next step, which would be, hey, can you attend a 1-hour webinar to learn more? And then, hey, can you do a due diligence reference check with another investor? And then each of those conversions is really what drives really success to a project. But it's all different, and it's a lot of fun, just the energy and excitement around crowdfunding in general.
Couldn't agree more. And painting out that funnel, what are typical timelines you see for that? I really resonate with the lower asks, as you mentioned. Hey, would you like to attend this? Let's move things here. Really reflecting of what an offline conversation would look like. So many founders come to us and think it's more of a game of checkers of, we presented this, tomorrow we're getting these investments or these leads, and really articulating and demonstrating, whiteboarding out what it'll look like in terms of the stage of the funnel has been a big part of that strategy process for us, combining forces with an issuer, with a brand, with a cryptocurrency. What type of timeline, or may I say sales cycle, are you guys seeing to get a larger investor in, a larger backer, or more of a retail on any of these types of campaigns, reward, equity, and or crypto?
I guess just to tackle them one at a time. So in the rewards-based world, we've worked with campaigns that have done, it's like the pre-launch stage. You kind of preheat the oven and get people excited. That can be as low as 30 to 60 days. And we've worked with campaigns that took a year. So it really ranges. And the reason being is because you have to look for those signals that the community is that they're excited. And it doesn't happen. There are some cases that we've worked with communities where the product was a perfect fit. And like, you buy ads, you see the ads converting at such a high rate that, the open rates, click-through rates, the shares, social shares rate, extremely high. But there's a lot of projects out there where the founder has an idea. And this is actually the problem, where founders, they always think their idea is the best idea in the world. But one of the key mistakes that they make is sometimes you might have the right product, but just the wrong audience. Or it could be as simple as, the messaging you're using isn't resonating. So for us, the most important objective to reach coming out of that pre-launch phase is testing your product market fit, making sure that the audience you're buying on is receptive. And then let's say equity crowdfunding also, it's going to be a little bit longer, because these types of investors are looking for different things. They're not just looking for an earbud. They're looking at, what's your business plan? They're looking at a different subset of data as opposed to just shares. And then you have the other complete side of the spectrum, where you have cryptocurrency, and you get one influencer that could just, the word they use, take you to the moon. But basically it's like, you can get one really viral, I don't know, Elon's one tweet could take you to the moon. So it's like the wild west out there in the crypto, and can't really say. There's a lot of new mechanisms that are putting frameworks to starting projects, like Polkadot, they have Polkastarter. Binance has Binance Launch. You have Pancake with their own launching platform. So legitimate projects are coming to legitimate exchanges, and it's speeding up the process. But it's very hard to say, because we're literally transitioning into a new 4-year cycle in the crypto space. And in it comes all new technologies that literally weren't here before.
If we had to give a time frame on product perk-based crowdfunding, you need at minimum 30 to 45 days to do a pre-launch we've seen. And then if you want to get into a more sophisticated real estate raise, 4 to 6 months of due diligence, where they need to see decks, they need to see your track record, previous projects you've done, maybe visit some of the sites. And then if you look at a due diligence checklist of an accredited investor, VC, or family office, their time frames takes them a while to get comfortable with deals.
Absolutely. And it sounds like similar types of timelines on cryptocurrency, or Ivan, as you were saying, in some cases, the Elon post, it could be a very short activation.
Yeah, there's some cases where it will kind of jump out of the norm because you have these super mega stars. But if you kind of think about the psyche of an investor, and I think this applies to all of these types of industries, and we're seeing this because we have clients who have found success by tackling these places. But I'd say, let's say, for example, social traction is one thing you must check off. So how many people are talking about you? Do you have content? One of the big things that, especially on the product side, people are researching products on YouTube. And if you don't have a presence there, even for, let's say, real estate funds, like if you don't have a presence there, you're not a thought leader there, you lose that credibility. So you almost have to take it from the approach where not only you're creating content, you're creating outreach, you're creating buzz, assets. It's of a lot of things. And that's where working with, let's say, who's done it before is so important, because they've been there, they've worked with, other crypto projects. They kind of know that plan or formula you're talking about, and it helps you shortcut that a lot if you have someone to guide you through that.
100%. And we try to be an open book in terms of our insights, want to be able to share expertise so that there's a higher success rate across all of these industries. And definitely something I admire about you guys and the content that you're putting out. Also sticking with brands post funding and making sure they're hitting their sales goals. I know you guys have told me about some work you've done with manufacturers and things that really, you made sure the brand was getting to that level of success, similar with cryptocurrency and equity. I think we could both align, and we can put all the information in the world out there, but it's different when you're engaging and bringing different teams to the table. I know, audience data and, different types of relationships with publishers and influencers, and even just having gone through these processes and knowing where the obstacles are going to present themselves can be a game changer for an issuer, for a brand, for a project. And they have a limited window of time. Time is their most valuable resource. So they don't have the luxury of testing out for 18 months. Jeffrey, you're mentioning 4 to 6 weeks, 4 to 6 months, varying timelines for crypto. So it's so important that they're able to minimize their tests and really get to effective channels quicker.
Yeah, 100%. Again, Jason, you know what it's like running a marketing agency. Transparency, setting client expectations are really what it's about for success for both parties, because you have clients that point and say, oh wow, look at this campaign, they did $1 million in 45 days, but they also don't understand the pre-launch that went into that, or possibly the 3 to 4 iterations that it took them to finally find that viral campaign. And there are templates and formulas that other projects have done. Some work, some are like industry standards, but for the most part, it's predictability and being transparent. Yes, as an agency, you have to really set those expectations with clients and show them the data. Always trust the data is what we like to say. Yeah,
digital agencies get a bad rap. And being able to communicate, being able to do what you say, that transparency really makes all the difference, because there's inherent risks with fundraising, with marketing, with entrepreneurship as a whole. So being able to speak to things, not finger pointing, but really determining, hey, how are we going to get to this goal quicker? If that doesn't work, what are we going to do to optimize? What are we going to change up to get there? Makes all the difference. And agencies and other verticals, could be more about sales volume. I know for our verticals, it's all about, hey, what was your last successful campaign? So, actually doing whatever it takes to get there. I also like how you mentioned about the numbers. We always have assumptions going into a campaign, but we wait for the analytics to tell us what's working, what's not working. I want to get into some questions about recommendations, but first wanted to ask, where do you see it all going? Crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, cryptocurrency. There's so much movement right now. It's a good place to be. I look at how many campaigns are on King's Crowd and how many exchanges, how many tokens are on CoinMarketCap. Where do you see the whole space going in the next 3 to 5 years?
I had a great conversation last night with a friend, and in a futuristic utopian age, is that everybody gets rewarded for their involvement in the process. And there's traditionally big tech giants like YouTube, Google. What we see what we feel is going to have extremely high growth potential is NFTs, and which is the digitization of intellectual property. So when it comes down to even music, movies that are being financed on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there's more of a crowd movement where multiple people can be involved. And, we've also seen campaigns not do so well over the last 5 to 6 years, and possibly they had issues with manufacturing, or they had with distribution, shipping product late. Do you feel that, in the sense that what does the future entail is like we see this idea of getting the crowd more involved into projects, and also having the economic incentive now to be able to become that partner. And you see it with like Start Engine, and you see it with, getting really technical, is like these governance tokens where different creators can be parts of this. So, the idea also is a music festival. Say you want to crowdfund a music festival, the vendors, the artist who's painting the murals on the wall, the musicians, the ticketing booth, they could all have a vested interest in the crowdfunding of a music festival now. And even the financiers that want to back it with initial capital. And it'd be a beautiful world if everybody shares in the financial upside, and also having a vested interest to make the event as best as possible.
And transparent, with no walls, no barriers. Absolutely. Excellent. And, to get back to the marketing a bit, wanted to ask, given the name of the show, what are some tests that you recommend to founders, whether that's for reward-based crowd funds and goal setting across any of the avenues, and with marketing channels, tactics, overall approach? What are some tests that you would really push founders towards exploring for their campaigns?
Yeah, I can kick this one off. So one of the tests that we always encourage is to build your community. So easy places for this is, let's say, a Facebook group, and do something like an AMA or Q&A or some sort of survey, just to see how many people are involved. You can tell. I mean, this is just one of the indicators, but if you're launching a product and you put it on this Facebook group and you have 10 people in the group, you're not going to have enough engagement. So it's also the size of that pre-launch group, but the level of their engagement. If you host an AMA, how many people are attending? How many people are actually chatting? So that is one way you can kind of test your community. It's so interesting because a recent cryptocurrency hosted an AMA, and it literally flooded Reddit because they said the founder was not professional enough. But it's funny because A, that's constructive criticism, but B, it just showed that project how viral their community, how sticky their community is. So that's one way to test, because I'm speaking to something that's broader than just crowdfunding. Like this could apply to, token raises. It could apply to nonprofit organizations. Just test your community by hosting something and seeing how many people are part of that conversation.
And then specifically, we use typeform questionnaires. We use ABCDE tests on cold email outreach campaigns to influencers. We have 30-minute to 1-hour calls with some of our earliest supporters and users, getting their feedback. Which image do you like better, this or this? Before we even shoot a video, we would ask potential customers, what questions do you have, prior to, watching or purchasing this product? Say, for example, we launched a highly technical UVC air purifier. They wanted to see data. They wanted to know that it was safe. Well, so before we shot the actual video, we framed the scenarios, and you could even show this to your potential backer and say, this is the scene that we're going to shoot, or these are, the campaign layout. Is this good enough for you to be able to purchase? And that's how we specifically do that test.
I got to tell you, we're on episode 37 of the podcast here, and that has not been mentioned to date. And I'm so big on communication, asking the other side, how do we create this a better experience? And I'll be on reporting calls, overhearing my team at times where we're trying to figure out what is going to lift the performance of the campaign. We're trying to determine what the audience sees. And what you're stating is we just ask them. We put out these, questionnaires. We're testing out how they respond to AMAs, where they're actually adding the questions, but in a live format and with video. And you're using that to shape the initial assets. I've heard of that, surveys, for getting some feedback, but to shape the initial assets, and that's how you're setting things up for success.
Well, it's also because communities, you can't really predict who's in your community, especially for, let's say, like new ideas, new projects. There's no defined community. So just a quick story. It's like it was a tech project, and the debate with the founder was, is it a lifestyle product or is it just a pure technology play? And it's funny because the founders were all saying, hey, this is a lifestyle. This is a perfect complement to, athletes, runners, whatever it is. And then we did a survey and we literally asked, which of these two images do you prefer? And I think it was like 70 to 80% said, I don't even care about lifestyle. I just want to see the technology. And I mean, at that point, you're not convincing the founders. You're just showing them the data. It's like, hey, 80% of your people don't care about lifestyle. And then we revised the entire campaign. And literally, it was like overnight, the conversion started increasing, because then your ads who were throwing on to people, just like the people that answered that survey, now they're seeing what they want to see. And it's, that's a common mistake of founders, because again, they always think their idea is the best and, their vision is it, but you have to listen to your community.
And getting into the specifics, and there's some really good value bombs. So we have a template of questions to ask them. And in the case of that campaign, we went to the largest crowdfunding backer community. We did a sponsored questionnaire and post, and we actually gave out the product beforehand. So we said, if you answer this questionnaire, we're going to be randomly selecting 5 people to not only get the product for free, but also get Amazon gift cards. And then from there, the reason why we chose that community of super backers is that they're the most likely to convert into a paying customer. So you're immediately going after your target market. So in the case of you're launching a cryptocurrency, go after the largest cryptocurrency community of investors that you think will contribute. Give them an airdrop or give them early access so that they have the vested interest. Get them to answer those questions and have them build with you in that upward trajectory, because they know your market really well. We've done this with mommy bloggers to literally, ultra high net worth investors, and that feedback process is very important for us.
Yeah, and I even throw it back to you, Jason. It's like, hey, do you like sneakers? Yeah. So if I showed you a sneaker and you're like, oh man, that looks terrible, if only it came in red, And 2 weeks later, I'm like, Jason, here it is. I made it in red. And now
Yeah.
you're going to be like, you're going to go to all your friends. You're, hey, oh my God, check it out. I love this shoe. It was my idea. I was one that said, make it in red. And now you're getting the network effect of Jason, who's, a big influencer, but now he's going to be championing your project because he feels, not only does he feel like he was listened to, but he was part of it. And that kind of pulls at the heartstrings of those creator communities. They love to feel like, I had a coworker where he wore this watch and it was like so old. I was like, why do you like it so much? It was the Pebble watch. And he turned it around. He's like, they engraved my backer number into the back of the watch. I'm going to wear this watch to the grave.
And connected to the process with the shoes, customized for me with the watch. I love the feedback loop. I mean, we'll A/B test all day and be basing everything on analytics. We've been part of surveys and have done a decent amount of reward-based crowdfunding. We've actually worked on the advertising for a higher amount of reward-based crowdfunding in conjunction with other groups and have been part of some of these surveys, but not to the degree where they're shifting things like what you're mentioning. And Jeffrey, to mention those larger audiences, how you're tapping into them, really like what you and Ivan are doing on there. And if you're speaking to a founder, someone on the marketing team at a potential client's office, you're showing them all of these success stories, these case studies. How do you address what to do when things are not working? How do you guys optimize if results are not to the performance benchmarks that you had set out for from the get-go?
We've gone so far as even asking other agencies, and we take a very collaborative approach here at CrowdCreate and other project founders. And also when we do an ABCDE test, we get more aggressive on the positioning, like completely left field and just reimagine it from the start if it's not performing in the way that we hoped. And just lots of ideas. And then we know a lot of people also that are just idea people. And then we'll ask them, how would you go about marketing this? There's just infinite number of possibilities. And at the end of the day, you keep trying and trying and trying and trying. And if you're a founder, hopefully they don't give up on their project and just keep on going out with multiple iterations time and time again to get it right.
Exactly. Not everything hits the results on the first attempt, but coming to the conversation each time with new ideas. We train our team to come to the call with options for new audiences, new messaging, new funnels, not too quick. We need conclusive data, but being able to approach the conversation with that energy. And that's how I measure real marketing talent internally as well too, is not who's able to follow the steps and get a campaign live and it happens to go well, but who's able to problem solve, who's even able to make the shifts that edit a campaign, manage it to a point of effectiveness versus just everything going right every time. But wanted to ask, because I know you guys have many successful campaigns, what are different insights you have towards scaling? So a campaign's going well, maybe it's on a reward crowdfund, maybe it's a crypto project, and they say, hey, our internal goals hit, or our external goals hit, we want to hit this higher goal we were hoping for internally, or we're passing these points on an equity crowdfund campaign. How do we refile? How do we get to these bigger milestones? What recommendations do you have towards scaling?
So I would say, don't underestimate the power or the wisdom of your crowd. So that's kind of one of our big themes here at CrowdCreate, is just this wisdom of the crowd. So just an example, let's say I'll take like a traditional rewards-based crowdfunding. There are those mechanisms called stretch goals. And a lot of times, founders will come up with them. But the even better way to do it is to use the wisdom of your crowd and literally ask your community, hey, how do I get to that next level? Because a lot of these people that are in your community, they're not just a purchaser. A lot of them are enthusiasts in that world. And we see it in the crypto community too, where sometimes they'll create their own community leads that came from the community, and they'll create new initiatives that as a founder, you may never have thought of. And in fact, they probably have insights that you might not even know. So I would say if you're looking to scale and grow, like don't be afraid to just ask your community, because there are ideas and people inside of those communities that can take you there. It doesn't always have to come from the founder.
Love it. That is a great way to go about it. Again, incorporating the crowd. It involves them in the experience further, I imagine, and gets them to be sharing with their audience. And back to some of the comments earlier, how important that social sharing is, the third-party validation, the social proof. So I could see that being instrumental in growth of these campaigns.
And in terms of scaling, the specific like communication channels we recommend is, number one is email. Number two would be video updates on a regular basis. And so we've seen the open rates are off the charts in the middle of a campaign. They're highly engaged. And then number three would be a referral program to incentivize your existing users. After you've nailed down the conversion, product market fit, your project did $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million. I mean, it's so hard to scale people to answer customer tickets and to do this, but go to your mass communication channels, use email, blast these people regularly, video, and then a good referral campaign is virality at its best we've seen.
Yeah. And also to piggyback off that concept, another area of scale is, let's say I'm just thinking like in the crypto world, you have a project that's doing well, tap into the audience of other thought leaders that are in that same space. So for example, this works really well for product reviewers too, where let's say a mommy blogger, they're really advocates in their community, and they probably have the eyeballs of, let's say, 50,000 people. If you know that thought leader is a good match for your project, work with them and tap into their community, because one $5,000 sponsored video or sponsorship or partnership that you do with them could actually yield more returns than, let's say, just a straight $5,000 ads if you find that right person.
And testing out different people till you get it to that point. Like you said, you find that right one, it can speak for miles.
It can speak for miles, but also just one example that we've done in our past is it was a home electronic device, and the return on spend was 11 or 12 through influencers.
Return on ad spend.
But you're not buying ads, you're buying sponsorships. Yeah. And so that's hard to replicate in a traditional ad buying world, especially when people are competing against you and it's a hot item. Now you're competing against your competitor for those impressions. But these influencers, so a lot of the clients that we work with, they also use it to enter new markets. So for example, they want to enter Germany. They'll partner up with they call it a key opinion leader or thought leader. So not only did they use it to enter new markets to create awareness, but in many cases, it could perform even better than just ad spend.
Absolutely. Being able to identify which channels are the key drivers there. We find ads to be consistent and consistently showing performance, but have seen the greatest returns, as you're mentioning, from other, in many cases, what feels is more organic mediums, even if there's some type of sponsorship in the background, but an influencer, a publisher, a group that's really behind the cause and pushing for it. And Ivan, Jeffrey, this has been so enriched in education and value here. This is exactly why we created the show. Any closing thoughts you have for founders before we wrap things up?
Let's see, closing thoughts. For any founder, including myself, you have to be humble and don't think your ideas. I preach this all the time, but sometimes, you can't let your ego get ahead of progress or, doing the right thing for your brand.
And my number one tip would be collaborate with others. Collaborate with Jason. He runs a great agency, digital research. Come connect with Crowdcreate. It's a free initial call. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. Ask Jason, ask myself, ask Ivan, feel free to reach out if you want to learn more. We publish content regularly. Subscribe to Jason's, podcast, and just be a sponge and just collaborate with others in the space. And that's what we'd love to help with.
Absolutely. I concur on all fronts there. And so glad we're able to do this, in our vertical and looking towards larger goals for everyone, and be able to collaborate on these type of recommendations. Gentlemen, if anyone would like to get in contact with you, as you're mentioned there, Jeffrey, speak further about their project, their ideas, their brainstorms, what is the best way for them to do so? What's your preferred method of communication?
So you can reach us. We have our website at crowdcreate.us. We also publish a lot of content, and we actually interview a lot of thought leaders and agencies too, to kind of give out these tips. But we have a YouTube channel. You can subscribe to us. It's Crowdcreate. And you also see our emails in the back of this, right over here, the green screen. But feel free to reach out to us. And our website's probably the easiest way, because we publish all of our case studies there.
Excellent. Ivan, thank you so much for the time, the recommendations. I know a lot of expertise behind it. Jeffrey, you've been able to give so many different recommendations towards channels, frequency, overall perspective on how to look at these campaigns. Thank you for joining, and we'll see everyone next time.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks for having us. Take care.